Jim Jordan versus Chuck Todd on NBC, catching a lot of eyeballs in the Twitterverse. We're going to go through the clip in detail. It's only a minute and 40-something seconds, but we're going to break it down because there's kind of a lot of screeching going on out of Chuck Todd's mouth. He is repeating a lot of the same talking points that many Democrats have said, that Trump is so much more of a monster than Joe Biden is because of things like obstruction and so on. We're going to talk about all of those different caveats in the argument. Before we look at what Alina Habba has to say, Mike Pence takes responsibility, and we check in with other people in Congress, in particular the Senate, Ted Cruz, John Cornyn, and Senator Manchin, who wonders who else had access to the Biden documents. But this debate has been going on for a long time. Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. Trump had his house raided. He had his documents splayed all over the floor. He had legal claims to the documents. And we say Biden didn't have any of that stuff. And he had a lot sort of a easier time when interfacing with the National Archives and the DOJ and the FBI. And so Chuck Todd is going to be really taking it to Jim Jordan. Chuck Todd tells Jim Jordan he's dead wrong. They're not equal at all. What happened with Joe Biden was very different than what Donald Trump did because Joe Biden's cooperative.
You keep talking about a raid, but you keep talking about this raid on Donald Trump. The amount of time, there was 9 months between the initial action that the archives made for a request of documents before they even turned it over to the Justice Department. The subpoena was issued 60 days before they actually executed the subpoena. And more importantly, the only time the public found out about it is because Donald Trump told the public about it. This was not some sort of, you paint it as a picture of the FBI did this, and this within hours of each other, when it was actually a year and a half of Donald Trump not complying with any of the requests from National Archives. A year and a half.
We're going to break all that down, certainly, in a minute. But you can see all of these different claims that Chuck Todd is making. We'll go through them one by one in a minute.
This is not some sort of proof that somehow that they've weaponized and playing politics over here.
They raided Trump's home. They haven't raided Biden's home.
Because Biden didn't defy a subpoena, Congressman. He defied a subpoena. By the way, he had 60 days to comply with the subpoena before they actually executed
President Trump had documents locked in a room with Secret Service protecting them. President Biden had documents in his garage and in a think tank that was funded by the Chinese. I think there's a difference. President Trump was the only guy who was actually president.
You talk about that. You're worried about the Chinese and Hunter Biden.
No, I'm just saying.
Are you worried about the Chinese and Donald Trump?
They took pictures of.
Are you at all worried about that?
No, I'm not. But they took pictures of the documents at Trump's house. They took no pictures of documents. In fact, it's not just me who would like to know what went on here. Senator Warner said it last week. He would like to get a briefing. He wants to see the documents. No, and guess what? The FBI is saying no, but they took pictures of the folders in Trump's home.
The issue is not whether what Joe Biden did.
No, the issue is equal treatment under the law. That's the issue.
No, the issue is treatment under the law. You do not seem to ever see the same conspiratorial problems when it's a Republican.
Oh, gosh. So, okay, let's go through this in detail. Kind of a ridiculous clip there, right? And you ask yourself, does Chuck Todd do that for the other side? Like, has he ever argued that passionately against a Democrat? Does he ever talk like that to a Democrat about with that much, type of a demeanor? I'm not real sure, but that is an interesting exchange. And so let's go through it in detail. Now, some of the claims that you'll see in this story is Trump did certain things that Joe Biden didn't do. Guess what? That's true. Why? Because Trump was president. Joe Biden was not president. Joe Biden was the vice president and separately a senator. Okay, a senator, which is a whole different category. We're going to hear Manchin and others will explain this to us, but there is a structure where you have sort of 8 people at the top who get access to classified materials. Most senators are not in that upper echelon of 8, right? It's the president, it's the vice president, it is the Speaker of the House, the Senate Majority Leader, some other people in the cabinet, right? It's a very, very tight circle of people who get access to those materials. Joe Biden was a senator, not privy to that inner circle in that top 8. And he had documents from that era as well. So when you step back on this for a minute, what Joe Biden did is actually dramatically worse than what Trump did just by virtue of his rank. Okay, alone. That's it. So we can just sort of take that out. And if you say Trump is a president, right, or a former president, when all of this happened, he had several different powers. One, declassification. We've talked about that. You might disagree with it. You might say he can't declassify that, or he should fill out the form from NARA, right? Or he should go do something and fill, my library book has been appropriately checked out now. You can say that the mechanics of it weren't done appropriately. That's fine. But Joe Biden didn't even have this mechanic there, Chuck Todd. He also didn't have any ability to declassify or to label these documents instead of declassifying them personal records versus presidential records. We've covered that case at length here. Judge Amy Berman, I think, from the D.C. Circuit Court, issued the Clinton sock drawer ruling. If the president has to check in with some bureaucrat at some other agency about what is personal, what is presidential, who really runs stuff? The president or the bureaucrat who gets to tell the president what is what? That's the whole point here. All of that applies also to Trump as well. Trump made legal claims to the documents. Biden never did. Trump said, those are mine. They're here. They're secured. They're in Mar-a-Lago. You know where they are. I know where they are. End of story. At least there's a claim being made. Joe Biden wasn't supposed to have the documents at all. You could argue that Trump wasn't supposed to have the documents, but at least you knew where they were. Joe's, you didn't even know they were there for how long they were there. NARA also monitored Trump's skiff. We've talked about this. FBI agents were down there. Trump popped his head in when they showed up and he said, hello, everybody. How you guys doing? So that's just the power differential there. Now, Chuck Todd also made this stupid argument. He said, well, Trump publicized it. We didn't do it. Well, of course, Trump publicized it because the FBI raided his residence. The Justice Department would love for a lot of this stuff to stay under the radar, right? Is what they say. That's the argument. Well, they wanted to keep it all under the radar because that's what they did with Joe Biden. They didn't announce it. It leaked to CBS, and that's how it all became public. And they say, well, Trump made this known. And Trump did make it known because that's really the only way you can defend against a government that operates in the dark of night. It's to expose it all. So the fact that he is making it known, making it public, it shouldn't go against him at all. In fact, it's a great thing that he did that. Otherwise, we would not have known about this disgusting behavior from the Justice Department. And on that point, the FBI and the DOJ, they are not keeping things under wrap there, Chucky. They are instead leaking like sieves. We covered many stories after the original raid on Mar-a-Lago where they were leaking the documents out, leaking photographs, leaking stories to the media, one after another about the contents of the documents, allegedly. So he talks about conspiracies as well. All these conspiracies show up when it's the Trump people criticizing the Biden people. There are conspiracies here. Well, what about your side's conspiracies before we get to ours? Back when Trump was facing this, remember all of these stories that came out? One right after the other about the nuclear codes. The list goes on and on. Here was one from NBC itself. FBI found nuclear document at Mar-a-Lago, reported by NBC News, where Chuck Todd works. FBI agents found, quote, a document, whatever it is. It's talking about nuclear capabilities at Trump's Mar-a-Lago raid, according to some secret person somewhere. NBC News says not whatever. Here's another one. Did Trump really bring nuclear secrets at Mar-a-Lago? This comes over from Rachel Maddow over at MSNBC. Another one. Trump says report of nuclear weapons at Mar-a-Lago is not right. But an NBC News source says it's connected back to ex-special counsel Robert Mueller's probe, right? On and on and on. So it was conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory with Trump. He was selling the secrets to the Saudis. He was getting in bed with them to promote golf deals, whatever. He's Putin's sock puppet. The list goes on and on. So Chuck Todd now wants to make it about the right's conspiracy theories when they were the people doing cartwheels and going hysterical over this stuff. And my last point on this before we move on is that Biden literally obstructed the Department of Justice, Chuck. Literally. We've talked about this many, many times. His lawyers were rummaging around through Biden's drawers to try to find all of these documents. They got a letter in mid-November from the DOJ. Assigned prosecutor John Lausch said, stop searching for the documents. They didn't stop searching for the documents. They found a whole additional batch on 12/20. DOJ said, stop looking for documents. They kept looking for documents and found more. At that moment, that was obstruction. That was in violation of a very specific request from the DOJ. And the DOJ didn't leak photos and they didn't raid any other residences. Nothing has happened as a result of any of this. So Chuck Todd can sit there and he can go hysterical and he can say, well, it's Trump's fault that he publicized it. He had to publicize it. And you guys raided it and then leaked every single detail to the media. And it's not happening in Joe Biden's case at all. And in fact, they have outright obstructed the investigation, no consequences at all. So Chuck Todd and the left will continue to, try to have it both ways. It's obviously dishonest, and anybody can see it for what it is. Now, Trump is facing some additional questions, right? He's got a number of different open legal battles that he is waging. But the good news is he's winning. Trump's lawyer, Alina Habba, says that Donald Trump is winning his lawsuits. And that's very good news. He's actually, showing up in court and things are going well for him. And so we're going to see what she has to say about Trump's success in a minute, right after we talk about our friends over at Brickhouse Nutrition. Because before we listen to Alina Habba, we got to make sure we've got some nutrients. Here, we're talking about Brickhouse Nutrition because, my friends, there's been a lot of time that has passed since the pandemic started and since the pandemic, we're transitioning, whatever, it's over, whatever it is. The point is, holidays have come and gone. We're all a little bit, could get in a little shape a little bit better. I know I could. And so you probably have seen a lot of these ads for weight loss diets and pills and all sorts of fad diets and so on and so forth. And I know they can be frustrating. You've been there, you've done that. They don't work. But there's new solutions that can work, like eating right, eating healthy, eating well, eating 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. If you eat well, you'll have more energy, life will be good, and you can imagine the weight and will just fall right off. And so now you can go over to our friends at Brickhouse Nutrition and get your Field of Greens superfood. Science-backed formula, specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. It's going to help you burn calories, fast forward your metabolism, make you feel healthier, and have more energy. You're going to look great. You're going to feel healthier. When you go to your doctor next time, your doctor is going to say, you look incredible. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. You look great. So let's get you started. Why don't you go over to brickhousenutrition.com and search for Field of Greens. You can see the product right here. It's going to make you feel energetic and just completely vibrant. Use code Robert to save 15% off your first purchase at fieldofgreens.com or brickhousenutrition.com. Get your superfood, get your Field of Greens, and start feeling better today. All right, and so let's go back over to Alina Habba. Trump's lawyer, Alina Habba, says Trump is actually winning. He's facing a lot of legal battles in different places around the country, but when all is said and done, he is coming out on top.
From the legal perspective, and somebody who is related and intimately involved in his legal cases, I would just like to say that, when people bring cases against him, which worries a lot of people, when you have those, but they're not within merit, there are systems in place, even when you have crooked judges, appellate division, et cetera. And we've been winning. They're not publicized. They're not going to be. But I invite, one time, I'll invite people to ask me questions directly next time I'm on with you. But I am happy to, because I know that's something people worry about. But I have to tell you, everything is going to be fine. He is incredibly bright. He always has been, and he's always been by the book. So I will see you all in 2024. But I'm really proud to be working for somebody like President Trump. And I hope I'm in it for the long haul. It would be an honor.
Right on, Alina Habba. All right, so we always like to have Alina Habba on the show. Yeah. Shout out to K Bean. What's up, K Bean? Good to see K Bean in the chat with the excellent comment on that. I don't disagree, K Bean. I don't disagree with that at all. Here, this one comes in. Now, let's turn our attention over to Mike Pence. Mike Pence is also responding. Mike Pence has had his own little document dilemma pop up. But we read through Mike Pence's lawyer's statement when he dealt with all of this stuff, and it was basically by the book. It was outstanding. This is a clip from Mike Pence, who's basically accepting total responsibility for all of the document problems that he has also found himself in.
Now, while I was not aware that those classified documents were in our personal residence, let me be clear. Those classified documents should not have been in my personal residence. Mistakes were made. And I take full responsibility.
Yeah, so I think that's a pretty strong statement from Pence. Mistakes made, full responsibility was taken, should not have been there, right? If Joe Biden had come out and said anything quite like that, this whole thing might have been done and over a long time ago. But that is not what happened. Instead, they covered it up and they lied to us about all of it, about additional batches popping out with Karine Jean-Pierre and others time and time again. So you can see two different ways to approach it. I think Mike Pence, right, his story is going to be dealt with and over. And I think a lot of the different Congress people are going to give him a pass on it. But Biden's is going to linger around for quite some time, and we'll, of course, continue to follow. Now, as we turn our attention over to the Senate side, let's listen in and see what they have to say about this. One of the big questions about Biden was about the Senate records, because when he was vice president, you get access to a higher level of records, a little bit more access than you are when you are just a lowly senator, one of 100. Now you're one of one, right? You're the vice president. And so Ted Cruz has, much to his chagrin, never made it up past that Senate level. He really wants to, vice president or president, but he's been a senator for a long time and he knows it's difficult to get documents out of SCIFs. There are rules, there are regulations. You don't just waltz in and out with these documents. So how the heck did Joe Biden get him in the first place?
The fact that he had documents from his Senate tenure, I have to admit, is baffling. I've been in the Senate 10 years. I can state to a metaphysical certainty there are no classified documents at my home. How do I know that? Because I've read classified documents in only one place. It is in the SCIF, which is a secure location in the basement of the Capitol. You go down and down and down the stairs. The reporters follow you as you're going, and they stop at the door. They're not allowed to go any further in. You go through a whole series of doors. It's almost like the opening of Get Smart, walking through a whole series of doors. And then you go, there's a police officer, and you check in any electronics you have. You give them your cell phone, you give them your AirPods, you give them your Fitbit. You have no electronics at all. You go through a giant secure door, a second secure door, and you sign out any documents you're going to read. And you read them in that locked room. Right. And then you give them back the documents and you sign them back in, which means if you have them, I don't know how you get them short of. You remember when Bill Clinton was president, yes, his national security advisor, Sandy Berger, who literally took classified documents from a SCIF, stuffed them down his underwear because he wanted to smuggle them out, and he wasn't very good at it. He got caught. I don't know if Joe Biden did that, but I have no idea how he got classified documents out of that SCIF. I don't know any other senator who's ever done that.
Diapers.
Well, wow.
Diapers. Was he wearing diapers back then in the Senate years? I don't know. It's probably been a while. But the point is, it is a good question. If it really is like that, I've never been in a SCIF as a senator. What it looks like in there, it sounds like a vault, a fortress. So Joe Biden just waltzes in and waltzes right back out with these documents. How'd they get out of there? Very, very curious. Now, Ted Cruz is not alone. We've got Senator Cornyn, and we're also going to check in with Senator Manchin and see what they have to say about this. But a big part of what we've talked about here was the lack of access. The Biden administration really does not want to talk about these confidential documents at all. They have done everything they can to keep it separated. Karine Jean-Pierre doesn't even have really apparently any information at all. Like literally, according to her, she says that it's all going over to the White House counsel's office for anything personal, anything criminal goes over to the DOJ. So all of these different limitations on who knows what and how. But there's one key committee that's supposed to basically have access to almost all of it. It's the Intelligence Committee. We've talked about the House Intelligence Committee here, which is the big battle between Schiff and Stinky Swalwell. They got booted off there, and McCarthy appointed new people. But also in the Senate, we have an intelligence committee, and it's a very important one, and they're supposed to have oversight over the intelligence. Now we've got a situation where Trump allegedly has classified documents. Biden does too. So does Pence. What else is out there? Don't the senators need to know what is going on?
Texas Republican Senator John Cornyn is a member of the Intelligence Committee, and he joins us now. Senator, it looks like the Intelligence Committee is going to get a little bit of satisfaction. The Assistant Attorney General, Carlos Uriarte, in a letter to Senators Warner and Rubio saying, we are working with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence to support the provision of information that will satisfy the committee's responsibilities without harming the ongoing special counsel investigations.
Yeah, so Congress, right, has been demanding letters, and now this is the response back from the DOJ. DOJ says, well, we have an ongoing investigation, which is very convenient. That means they can continue to use that indefinitely.
From what you know, Jay is trying to facilitate here, is that satisfactory?
Well, this should have been the initial posture of the Department of Justice. It's completely unacceptable, as Senator Warner, Senator Rubio pointed out, for the Biden administration saying we're going to block access to information about classified information that involves the Biden Justice Department, or excuse me, involves the Biden presidency. So this is a little better, but frankly, it's not going to be acceptable until we get access to all the classified materials. The Senate Select Committee on Intelligence regularly reviews classified documents. We don't take them home. We don't leave them in our garage. We leave them in secure facilities, and we don't talk about them. So I believe we can be trusted to get access to this information to assess its national security consequences. We don't care about the investigation. That's up to the Department of Justice. But what we do care about American national security and what these documents might reveal.
You're on the same page as Senators Rubio and Warner, who want to see the actual documents themselves.
Yeah, we played that clip last week. They were very frustrated, and this was a bipartisan frustration because they're asking the same questions that we are. First of all, how did Joe Biden get those documents? Why did they leave the SCIF? If they left the SCIF, is it the reason they left the SCIF because they were inconsequential documents or because they were consequential documents? Was it a mistake that these little Post-it notes got stuck to the bottom of Joe Biden's shoe? Or did these things involve Ukraine and Hunter needed them in order to facilitate his business dealings there? And if that is the case, or conversely, right? Let's say it's Trump. Trump was sending, a fax over to the Saudis saying, yeah, for $1 billion, I'll put a golf club, wherever you want one or whatever. If all of that's going on, we all want to know about it. And so does Congress.
Warner saying, quote, we have a right as not only members of the Intelligence Committee, but as part of the leadership to review virtually every classified document, part of the so-called Gang of Eight. The DOJ is indicating, though, that they're not about to give up the actual Trump and Biden documents because they're part of an ongoing investigation. What do you?
Yeah, always, right? And that's part of the strategy, right? That's the force field. As soon as Trump declared, boom, I'm running for office now. Oh, man, you're kidding me. We better actually have a special counsel now so that we don't have to give you anything for another couple of years. Because if we show you what we actually got, you're going to see it's not the nuclear codes. It's not these ultra high, top secret classified intelligence briefings. These are just stupid mementos. And it's all much ado about nothing.
Well, ordinarily, you would not, to maintain the integrity of a criminal investigation, you would want to keep it confidential, and we understand that if it involves a private person, but this involves much more than just a private person.
It's a sitting president.
Investigation that affects their jeopardy or not. This has national security implications. If you can imagine a scenario where some of this classified materials would reveal what an adversary may or may not do in the near term, and this is something that the policymakers, we as the members of Congress, would not get access to because the Department of Justice locked it down for 2 years while they completed their investigation.
Right, 2 years.
You can see what a danger that might present to national security. So this is unacceptable. Now we'll see whether Department of Justice will be forthcoming enough, but I don't believe it will be acceptable to do anything less than get full access to all the classified documents.
Here's what your colleague from Florida, Senator Marco Rubio, said about that point. Listen here.
We played this last week.
I don't know how congressional oversight on the documents, actually knowing what they are, in any way impedes an investigation.
Don't they trust the senators? Okay, so the DOJ says, well, if we show Marco Rubio and Mark Warner these documents, I guess maybe they'll leak it. I guess, what, they think they're Adam Schiff or something?
These are probably materials we already have access to. We just don't know which ones they are.
Well, why do you believe, Senator, it is imperative for the Intelligence Committee there in the Senate to have access to the actual documents and not just be briefed on them?
Well, after the Church Committee conducted investigations into abuses of the intelligence gathering authority, the Congress created oversight committees, both in the House and the Senate, to provide an extra layer of protection to the American people to make sure that these tools were not misused. And so we do have enhanced insight into these documents. I read classified documents on at least a weekly basis, and we have briefings directly from the people collecting that intelligence as part of our oversight responsibilities. But we have a constitutional responsibility more than anything else as a co-equal branch of government concerned about the safety and security of the United States. That cannot be trumped by the private interests of President Biden or any other single individual and an investigation into whether they mishandled those documents or not.
Yeah, and we don't take their word for it. We don't trust their summaries. We don't just say, oh, well, Karine Jean-Pierre said that they're handling it appropriately, so I guess it's handled appropriately. Or Ian Sams, or any of the Bob Bowers, right? Any of these White House lawyers, and Merrick Garland, and the rest of, Lisa Monaco, and Lausch, and Robert Hur, and all of these people at the DOJ. We don't trust them. That's why. We don't want their summaries or their promises that this is all done by the book. Nobody trusts them for a minute. That's why we want to see what the documents are. So we'll see if Senator Cornyn gets it. Now, it's not just the Republicans who are upset about this. Senator Manchin is also raising the red flag. Manchin asks a very important question. Who else had access to the Biden documents?
On the classified documents, the president has said he has no regrets about how they've handled that since then. You've said that you do believe he should have a lot of regrets about how it's been handled.
Sure, you should have regrets on that. However it happened, I don't think anything was intentional. And now we're finding out whoever had access. The top, there's a top 8 in this, in our government that get classified information a little differently than the rest of us. We usually go down in a skiff. And all the senators and congresspeople have to go into that skiff. And there is no way in the world that we're able to take that out of that skiff, which is a secured area.
No way.
Now, president, vice president, and those have them delivered to them, whether it be at the White House or be at their office. I just there has to be better checks and balances on this. But now we find that Vice President Pence, both of our presidents, former President Trump and now President, everybody should have regrets because it can get into the wrong hands. And classified documents are truly classified. Top secret is absolutely top secret, and it's something that could harm our defense of our country and basically the people who were able to get the information that we need to make sure that we're defending our country properly.
The president has said he takes classified documents seriously, but does it seem that way to you?
No.
It seems that basically we have no checks and balances when it comes to that level. Okay, and how
didn't want to answer
happened.
that question, but
I know he takes it seriously when he reads them. He gets briefed every morning, and basically he's been involved for so many years that he has been at the skiff as much as we have been at the skiff, seeing what goes on. And they always say, are you clean when you go in? Take all your electronics off. When you're coming out, they're saying, are you clean? You have anything on you?
So you're basically saying it's a different standard that applies to you and some other senators than it applies to those on the Intelligence Committee or maybe the president and the vice president?
There's 8. You have the Intelligence Committee, and you have basically the Speaker, and you have the majority and minority leaders. So you have the 8 and the President and Vice President. And they're exposed a little differently, yes.
Are you worried that this casts a cloud over the expected 2024 announcement from President Biden?
Well, every day something new comes out and somebody else has got it, and they're finding him. I think what they ought to do is find out how this happened. How would it ever happen? Who boxed up the materials? Who would ever have the materials basically in the same as my papers and when I clear my office out, papers I have and certain papers in certain areas, but who would ever have secured classified documents in the same area as your general correspondence would be? That doesn't make sense to me at all.
So it sounds like he's saying he doesn't take it seriously at all, right? Joe Biden has these documents just in his filing cabinet. So he doesn't take him seriously, has no idea how he got him out, would like to figure out how, says there's no checks and balances. Is he going to run again? I don't know. Stuff keeps coming out every day.
It does cast a cloud over it, you think?
It casts a cloud over the whole process. Saying that one person's more guilty than the other, I think the smart thing that was done here is Merrick Garland has special counsel. Let the special counsel do their job, and I think they will do a very good job, very thorough job, but hopefully give us a remedy of how we can prevent this from ever happening.
That is a tough clip there from Manchin. So he is explaining that he's got some serious concerns about this. And of course, we will continue to follow. That is Joe Manchin, and he is responding to the White House document scandal. Of course, there'll be a lot more to cover on that one, and we will continue to cover it. That is Jordan versus Todd. And we hope that you join us as we continue to cover the Biden document scandal. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one.